I will say that this video was really hard for me to do, and sorry, not because I have very particularly strong feelings one way or the other about Twilight, but I know that this is a very popular, unpopular series, so that's why it's hard, because even though I was a huge fan, I am not anymore. I've changed, and my reading habits and the things that I enjoy have changed. So my opinion about Twilight has completely shifted. And Midnight Sun, no matter how much better or more in-depth it was, is the same story of Twilight. You are getting Edward's thoughts, and you're getting his kind of over-processing, in my opinion, of things, because he can read minds, so he's got a lot going on. You're getting more with his family, and more with Alice, who is a wonderful character. But I just wanted to come on here and say that I filmed this, and I didn't enjoy filming it. I didn't enjoy reading the books, and it shows. I will just say, if you're really interested in my opinion on Twilight and Midnight Sun, watch the video, but this is not like an enjoyable video for me to film, or it's not an enjoyable series for me to read. I'm just not a fan anymore. And I mainly did it so that people would know, whether they should take the time to read Midnight Sun. But thinking about it, I've done this a couple of times where I do things for videos and then they don't turn out very good, and I really should stick to things that really interest me. But I didn't want to leave you guys hanging with this big release that everybody's talking about. So I did read it. I reread Twilight, as you'll see, and I read Midnight Sun, and it's just not for me. I just can't get over the whole relationship. It's just not a good relationship, in my opinion. And like I will say in this video, this is a fantasy. If you enjoy it, that's fine. Lots of things are, this is a book. It's not a big deal. But to me, the relationship is not a good one, and I really didn't like the gaslighting of Edward, that Edward does to Bella, when he lies to her about things and tells her at one point that she's crazy, that she's seeing things and she knows that she's not. But that's really, really harmful, and as someone who was in a relationship that was very toxic, I recognize that, and it bothers me. I'm not saying you should feel this way about these books. This is my opinion completely. So go into it like knowing that the video ahead is not going to be a glowing review of these books. I don't enjoy them. I can't really get past that fact in talking about them, so the video is pretty negative, and I don't, like I said, I didn't want to film these without giving you an intro, kind of explaining, because I just feel kind of bad that I even went to this, like that I kind of feel bad that I can't say more nice things, because I know that some people who really are diehard fans of this series are going to be upset, but this is just my opinion. So, and I also know that it's kind of like a thing now to bash these series that we all loved. Like, everybody loved Twilight when we were younger, and it was a very popular series. And same thing with Mortal Instruments, which I'm going to be rereading. And I feel the same way. I know I'm not going to like it. It's just, you change as a person. And I'm in my 30s, and I feel differently about these books than I did when I was younger. So just wanted to say that. I'm sorry for the long rambly video, and I'm sorry for kind of my just bad attitude about it, because looking back and editing this video, I'm like, honey, get it together. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing Twilight, because I reread it recently in preparation for Midnight Sun. This is Twilight from Edward's perspective. So I'm going to just go over whether or not I think this is worth reading, whether you need to read it, whether it's any good, and then I'll get into my whole thoughts on this series and the things that I really took issue with. I'm going to try and be quick, because this is going to be a rambly video anyway, but I will just say right off the bat, if you are not a die-hard Twilight fan, don't bother. Seriously, don't. This book is huge. It took forever to get through. It is basically just Twilight word for word, but with a few reactions from Edward. There are some things that were added, which were okay, but it was definitely not enough for me to feel like it was worth it. And I am not a diehard Twilight fan. So if you're just a casual person who kind of like the series, or even if you don't like it, like, this will not change your opinion. This is not going to retcon Edward to make him suddenly a great guy. Sorry. Am I tilted? Okay, I'm sorry. I hope that's better. Anyway, yeah, there's not going to be enough of Edward character development or change. She does do some really funny things where she tries to say that things that Edward said that sounded really bad in Twilight, like kind of mean or controlling things. Like, she kind of gives him like an out in his mind where he doesn't mean it that way. Okay, Edward, we're not just, it doesn't change what you're saying. You can mean it all really well, but you basically are terrible. And I'm sorry. I'm just going to put it out there. I do not like the Twilight series. I read it originally when it first came out. I was still in my teens then, technically. And I did enjoy it. I read the whole series. I dressed up for the movie premiere. I was a Twilight fan. And then I grew up and had kids. And I'm 34 and I have a daughter. And these books honestly horrify me in every way. Like, I can't handle these books. No. And I would never recommend them. And I would hope that my daughter would not read them, because I do think that they're terrible and promote pretty much a very unhealthy, toxic relationship. All that to say, if you love these books, good. Like, good for you. Love the books. They're fantasy. This is a fantasy book. I'm not going to freak out about like, these shouldn't have been written and no one should read them. No, of course read them if you like them and enjoy them. Like, and love Midnight Sun if you love Edward. There are tons of books that I would love to have of characters that I love, their perspective. Like, books where it's from the female's perspective. And I would love it, but, we had a whole different book from the male's perspective, or, whatever. Like, I would love that for certain books and series I love. So if everybody who waited all these years for Midnight Sun to come out are super happy and it's just hitting all the right buttons for you, then good. I am mad at myself, though, for subjecting myself to reading this. It is part of a buddy read I'm doing on Instagram, so totally worth it, because my friends on Instagram are just amazing, and I will suffer for this. But I don't think Twilight is good. The writing is very juvenile, and I'm going to start talking spoilers, so you've warned. Twilight is, of course, about a young girl who's 17. She goes to Forks, Washington, and to live with her dad, and then she meets basically vampires and falls in love with one of them. I just really hated Bella as much as, Edward too, but Bella as a female character is insulting on every level. Bella is not very bright. Bella really acts very, very, very foolishly. She is also very childish, and there are things that, as I was reading the Twilight again, her reaction to everyone around her is very kind of mean. And I didn't feel like Midnight Sun absolved her in any way by giving us Edward's perspective, because she describes like people around her, like the guys, and how they're all falling all over themselves to like ask her out and everything. And she describes Mike as like following her around like a golden retriever. And she really looks down on everybody in a way that's just not attractive. She's just not very nice. And there are some notable exceptions to people that she seems to be friends with, but the other thing that kills me about this is Bella is supposed to be completely ordinary. Totally ordinary. She's nothing special. Please stop. That is so obnoxious. Nobody believes that about Bella. Everybody in the freaking town is so into Bella. All the guys are obsessed with Bella, but she's supposed to be so ordinary that it makes teenage girls reading that go, well, why aren't guys falling all over themselves for me? Like, that should just happen, right? She's just an ordinary girl. And Bella says some really stupid things. Like, when Edward picks her up and she says, he picked me up like I was 10 pounds instead of 110. I wanted to vomit. I'm like, ooh, wow, a whole 110 pounds? Like, Bella, what's wrong with you? I was so annoyed. I'm like, my husband can pick me up. I'm small. And my husband is not a big guy. It's not hard. So, Bella, her dialogue is terrible. The whole first Twilight book has almost no action. Midnight Sun's the same. There's like the last quarter of the book is where the action picks up. But Twilight especially reads like one long diary entry that I wish I had never read. Today, went to class. Edward was there. He spoke to me. He looks like a model. Like, whoa. It was awful. There was just so little redeeming things about these books, and especially like when I just couldn't relate to anyone in the story but Charlie, who is great. I don't like Stephanie Meyer's writing, and like she's the one who gave us 50 Shades of Grey too, because that started off as fan fiction of Twilight, so yeah. But I love Charlie. Like, if she wrote any character great, I will say Charlie is great. I love that character. He's perfect as the dad. Like, his reactions are so funny, and his love for Bella is just like heartwarming and sweet, and he's just your typical dad who just doesn't get things. He reminds me of my dad, so I totally love Charlie. I also feel like Jacob as a character comes off really good in both books. If you are a Jacob fan, when even in Midnight Sun, when Edward is in Jacob's mind, he describes it as being wholesome and nice to be in, somebody's mind that's just so kind and so likable. And it's like, yeah, even Edward can see that Jacob is great. Darn you, Bella. So, yeah, I didn't love these books. I feel that there's a lot of very problematic things, which I know everybody has talked about as far as Edward treating Bella badly. Their relationship is very toxic. Bella basically withdraws from everybody as soon as she gets any indication that Edward is into her. She can't focus on anything. She can't live without him, and it's kind of gross, actually. I really hated that about the book, and I hated that Bella says she's in love with him when she doesn't even know anything about him. Like, she knows he's a vampire. Like, so he's basically a murderer, and she's like, well, I don't know anything about you, but I love you. I just love you so much and so deep. And Stephanie Meyer doesn't use any of the things that are very common in vampire, fantasy, werewolf lore to explain Bella's behavior. So rather than introducing things like vampire compulsion or persuasion, a lot of books will just say vampires can control humans. They don't ever give Bella that out. So her feelings aren't being manipulated to where Edward is controlling it and maybe she's even feeding off of his feelings for her. No, we don't get that. It's pretty much established in Midnight Sun that that's not true. He can't control her in any way, and he also can't read her thoughts. So it's not that Edward, although she may be attracted to him because he is a vampire and that's part of his thing is being so attractive, and so that his prey, he can pull them in. But she always has a choice, and it's pretty much, Edward is never like, well, I can make you do what I want. I mean, he forces her to do stuff, but it's not the same as him being able to just look at her and go, do this, which is something that would have helped Bella to not seem so pathetic. The other thing is the idea of fated mates, where if Bella and Edward were set up to be a couple, it was written in the stars, they're going to be together, this is always, was going to happen, they were going to meet, it's fate. That's common enough in fantasy, but that is not really true for vampires or vampire lore in this book, because it's set up that Esme and Carlisle had a very slow courtship where he didn't really know, he had not really any feelings for her that way, and then when she died and became a vampire, then she had a lot of gratitude and cared about him, and then through Edward he realized her feelings and all this stuff. It's they obviously didn't have that instantaneous I saw you, I love you the moment I looked in your eyes. And even Edward feels nothing towards Bella except for resentment and frustration and I want to kill you when he first sees her. So they don't give Bella any outs. They don't make it seem like she can't control what she's doing, and that's why she's acting so stupid. She's just supposedly stupid and clumsy and ordinary and not interesting. I mean, this is words used. Silly, foolish. Bella's not given a lot to work with. She's just a mess, and I don't like her character and the way that it was set up at all. As much as Edward gets crap, it's Bella ignores everything that is telling her that she shouldn't do certain things and does them anyway. She's headstrong and stubborn and all of the dumb things. She never does anything that's good for her. And Edward sees this as, when we get, from Midnight Sun, his perspective, as Bella being so selfless and so, but Bella really isn't. She's pretty much a self-centered teenager, and he turns all of her problems into like this, oh, well, she's just so perfect. She just does everything for everybody else. She takes care of Renee. She takes care of Charlie. I'm like, Bella is not great. And he romanticizes all these things about her where you're like, she's basically nothing. Without Edward, Bella does not exist. She pretty much says this. She stops existing after he leaves. And that's not good. That's not a good character. Spoiler, in the next book, when Edward does finally leave, which is going to happen if you read Midnight Sun, if you read it in the order of like Twilight first, Midnight Sun, and then read the series, Edward is pretty much always intending to leave. He knows this is going to hurt her really deeply, but he's not planning on staying. So, all the things that are kind of romantic and sweet at the end of Twilight feel very sad and very final, in that like, he's already setting it up. He's not planning on staying. He knows he's hurt her and that he needs to just leave. So, there are a lot of things with Twilight I didn't like. So many things as far as... Let me just get into this. I will say, one thing that's hit pretty heavily, there's always kind of a little bit of a biblical imagery of the lion and the lamb, all that kind of stuff with Twilight, in the cover with holding out the apple, the temptation, all that. Well, Midnight Sun with the pomegranate on the front is going for a whole Hades and Persephone kind of vibe. Edward actually references it several times. It's very heavily mentioned in the book, as far as him trying, to pull her down into the underworld and all this. I didn't like it. It kind of was just like constantly him talking about that and the pomegranate seeds, and I was just like, ugh. But I will say this is not a good book in my opinion. It's not a good series in my opinion. I don't like it. I really wish that the Midnight Sun book would have been different, and that I don't think she should have ever released it. It's just not, it's not enough. I mean, there's so little here that will grab your attention and things that you didn't know. There's a couple little things with Edward and Esme that I thought were really sweet, and I think there were a few things added, of course, with his siblings that are nice. The things with the tracker, though, that I thought would actually have like a lot more to it were really basic, really quick. I mean, once this book gets to the point where the action starts, it's flying fast through that, because that's what Twilight does. It doesn't, that's not the point. The point is the love or whatever. So you get very little of the, very little added to the action sequence. The other thing about it is that Edward is over 100 years old, I believe. So he should be mature than a 17-year-old. And I feel like the other thing that is sometimes brought into vampire lore is that vampires don't change. Once they are changed, the last time they become a vampire, they don't really change or grow as people. They're very much stuck at that. Well, I don't think Stephenie Meyer wanted that, but she does pretty much show that Edward is a child. I mean, the way that he acts and his attitude and even his thought process is very immature. For all of the way that she tries to infuse his language with being a little bit more adult, he's very childish. He's jealous of, silly things. And he always tries to attribute this to like, oh, well, my humanity is waking back up. Well, like, no, you're just kind of a baby. Like, you're just acting like a little jerk. And I get that she obviously didn't want to say that, oh, well, he's stuck in 17-year-old. But in some ways, she lets you believe that because of how Esme treats him, especially in Midnight Sun, as her child. He's going to her for comfort. He's going to Carlisle for advice. So is Edward 100 or is he 17? It's kind of left up to how you want to feel about it, because of course it would be very inappropriate to have a 100-year-old with a 17-year-old, which is how it should have been. Bella and Edward don't have anything in common if he's already lived his life and has all these degrees, and really it would be super inappropriate for him to be interested in her. But they want to leave it open to him being stuck at 17, but he's not really stuck. Which is also just a kind of out. her not really wanting to commit to anything. Frustrating. And the other thing that is explored in Midnight Sun is the idea that Edward cannot hear Bella because she has a shield up. That is something that you find out later, supposedly in Breaking Dawn. She's actually blocking him. She has an extra power. This is very much described as a power in Midnight Sun, like Edward's mind reading, Alice's ability to see the future, Jesper's ability to like calm people down and influence their emotions. But it's not a power in Midnight Sun, which means when she wrote this, she didn't maybe even have that in her mind, or what was she thinking? Because Charlie also can block Edward. He can't read Charlie's thoughts. He can know their shape, the idea of them, but Charlie isn't he doesn't have a power. He just is different. And Bella is supposedly, like, it makes me feel like the whole, like, I hated Breaking Dawn and all of the superpowers at the end and everything, but it made me feel like it was just totally put together at the last minute, because even in Midnight Sun, it makes no sense. If Charlie can't be heard, he doesn't know his thoughts. He gets the gist of it, but Charlie is not destined to be a vampire, and they really use the whole, like, Bella's power at the end, like, oh, she was always destined to be a vampire, which is just crap. It's total crap. But I'm sorry, I just really don't like that. And the other thing is that Renee is totally opposite. Her thoughts scream, and she actually influences people with how she kind of pulls them in. So it's kind of like gives her a little bit of a power too. Renee is Bella's mom, and she basically comes across as so needy, and so in what she wants. People are drawn to do what she needs and help her, and have this pull of her personality / her thoughts screaming all the time. She's very like outwardly calm, but it's like drawing people to her to do her bidding almost. And I just don't get that. It was so weird. It's such a weird addition to like make it so Edward can't hear Charlie, but Renee's basically screaming, and then that created Bella, who can basically block him completely, and therefore she has this power, and she's supposed to later be a vampire. I don't know. It was so weird and didn't really help, because if Bella just inherited the ability from Charlie to thoroughly block her thoughts, it's not a superpower. It's just, they're just different. Her dad is different, she's different, and there was no reason, like, she wasn't like destined to be a vampire. But I just so the other thing that I will say really quick about this is that the book that should have been written is Alice's story. Alice is cool. Alice is a cool character, and even just a little bit that we hear about Alice and how she was created and finding Jasper and all that, Alice is a better character. Like, she's infinitely more interesting than Bella. She's got a way better story about her being confined to a mental institution and being in the dark all the time, and then turned and she wakes up a vampire. Alice would have been a great character to have a spin-off novel, if not the whole series written about her. She's just way better. Sadly, we don't get that story, and I will say, I kind of hope Stephenie Meyer's done with Twilight. Like, let it die. So, sorry, I just had to look up what I was writing about. I wrote extensive notes on this. I don't think I hit hardly anything, because I just don't want to talk about this. I'm sorry. These books were not good to me. They were boring. I had to force myself to finish Midnight Sun, and I'm mad at myself that I took this up. But I wanted people to have this. I do this for you. I mean, and I wanted you guys to know my thoughts and not waste, the money on the book if you don't really love this series. So I will say, I think this book presents a really unhealthy relationship. There's just no getting around that, in my opinion. You can love it, just like you can love Feyre and Rysand or whoever you want. I don't like it if you like it. But to me, Twilight is just not a very good book. Besides Midnight Sun trying to retcon, like I said, some aspects of it, giving Bella slightly more personality. Their question and answer session is seen pretty thoroughly in Midnight Sun, so you get more of her answers to his questions as far as like her taste in music and things. You know what CD Phil gave her. This will make sense to Twilight fans. It was Linkin Park. And then you see like the books that she loves, and it tries to make her seem more interesting. It just doesn't succeed because there's nothing to Bella. Like I said, Bella doesn't exist without Edward. Bella has no personality Bella talks about how she loves the color brown. Like, there's nothing about Bella that is interesting, and the dialogue in these books are atrocious. And even knowing Edward's thoughts doesn't help you feel better about him, because he's basically either willing to let Bella die because he knows he might not be able to control himself, or he's so, overly protective of her that it makes Bella seem like she is totally incompetent. She is, but he feels the need to take control. And both of these things are not good. It's like oh, I might kill you, I'm so interested in your blood. I mean, he's fantasizing about killing her in that meadow. So things that are totally like sweet, romantic-y scenes from Twilight take on a very different tone in Midnight Sun when you know that at certain times he's very much thinking about murdering her. And Bella sits there and excuses it all. You can say, I'm taking these books too seriously, but if this scene was about a woman excusing abuse, which it is, you would be like, that's kind of problematic. So that's my thought. Like I said, I don't try not to take these books too seriously. I just can't get behind the whole series. I do feel like this has changed my opinion, and I do feel that Jacob in the first books is the better choice. Unfortunately, then they introduced the aspect of werewolves later on in the series, and that kind of is a bummer because Jacob is a great character in the first couple books. He's super sweet, he's super caring, and even Edward reading his mind knows that Jacob is a great guy. And then, of course, they turn him into a werewolf. He has all these problems, his emotions are crazy, and he's all, bent out of shape about different stuff. So it's like, Stephenie Meyer has to ruin everything. I will say I believe Charlie is always a great character, and I do like Alice. I wish that the books would have been about her because she's a fun character. And when you get Alice's visions through Edward being able to read her mind, it's kind of fun. Like, you get to see her progression of how she's going to change things, how she's going to do things differently. She's running through scenarios all the time. That would have been a super fun book. I appreciate it if you watch the whole thing. Definitely comment and let me know your thoughts on Twilight and if they've changed. I have changed my opinion about tons of books. I'm going to be rereading the first book and The Mortal Instruments, and I have a pretty solid idea that I won't like it. I love those books when they first came out, but I've changed, and that's okay. It's okay to change as a reader. It's okay to like different things, and there's nothing wrong with liking things geared towards teenagers when you're a teenager. So please just take this as my opinion, and talk to me in the comments. Let me know if you plan to read Midnight Sun, and if there's a scene that you were particularly looking forward to seeing from Edward's perspective. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Oh. Please like and subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.